All of us here today, in the audience and on this podium, are determined to continue to fight for the people at Camp Ashraf. As I've said before, this is not a partisan issue. We have on the podium before you a remarkable group of dedicated public servants from across the political spectrum and from all branches of the American government. Whatever our political affiliation, it has no bearing today, as we are unified, shoulder to shoulder, in our effort to help right this wrong, to delist the MEK, and to help the people at Camp Ashraf.
We in the United States have continued to fail to acknowledge our commitment to ensure the safety of the Ashraf residents, hiding behind the lame excuse that it is now an Iraqi problem. Ambassador Jeffrey in Iraq, his idea without any assurance or even any apparent concern, providing rationale as to why this is a good idea other than saying it moves it further away from the Iran border, is appalling. It causes me to stop and wonder, what is this man drinking? The Iranian influence on the Maliki government today has shown us that the Maliki government is incapable of providing the degree of protection for the Ashraf residents that they should be providing. It has shown that the Maliki government has a disdain for the Ashraf residents because we see inhumane treatment of the Ashraf residents on a daily basis, to include the loudspeakers, the psychological warfare that they have been carrying out, as well as the fact that they have continued to not allow the proper degree of medical treatment for the Ashraf residents. And then, of course, we all watched the Maliki-controlled troops as they attacked or slaughtered and injured the unarmed residents of the Camp Ashraf. My recommendation would be, first and foremost, take the MEK off the list. Secondly, we need to remember that the Ashraf residents are part of the group that the United States recognized as protected citizens under the Fourth Geneva Convention, and that we ourselves provided protection for 6 years. Third, we need to pressure the Iraqis to stop all harassment and suppressive measures against the Ashraf residents today. Fourth, given that the Ashraf residents have accepted relocation as an option, we should let the Iraqis know in no uncertain terms, and by that I mean use maybe some what I would characterize as coercive diplomacy, that forcible displacement inside Iraq is totally unacceptable. We should use the tools of our national power, particularly our diplomatic and our economic tools, to ensure that the Iraqis live up to the commitments that we made to the Ashraf residents if we are not going to do it ourselves. Fifth, we in the United States should step up to our responsibilities and guarantee temporary protection to the residents of Ashraf until they are resettled in third countries.
And the cold-blooded murder of unarmed people is wrong no matter where it happens and no matter who commits it. It is simply wrong. It is anti-democratic. It is anti-American. It is against international law. It is wrong. And so that piece is very, very simple. Now, a lot of my work has been on preventing mass atrocity. Mass atrocity is the slaughter of unarmed civilians. That is what has happened in Camp Ashraf, and it is wrong. What I would like to say in conclusion is that I do see a very special American responsibility to ensure the safety of those in Camp Ashraf until their final status is determined. And clearly it needs to be a priority to determine that final status, to work not simply with our erstwhile allies, the Iraqi government, which has been perpetrating these crimes, but also with our European friends and the international community.
This is not just a case of the Department of State and the U.S. government not acting. It's not just the fact that they have not made this decision. The fact that they have maintained this organization improperly without legal or factual basis on the foreign terrorist organization list has given the Iranian regime, through its proxy in Baghdad, a license to kill. We saw that, and I think you've seen the videos, absolute documented war crimes of the Iraqi regime using, by the way, U.S. weapons, Iraqi police officers using equipment and training given to them by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, coming in and massacring innocent, unarmed freedom fighters, using as the basis of its justification the fact that the United States government lists these people as terrorists. A couple of our Congress members just recently met with President Maliki, and he reminded them in no uncertain terms, your government calls these people terrorists. And on again, when you see these arrests in Tehran, the ones that make it over the wall into the international media, they regularly arrest people and use as a basis for detention, conviction, and execution the fact that they are members, alleged members, of this organization. So the indecision here is not just an indecision, it is a facilitation of this regime through its proxy in Baghdad, unfortunately, murdering and killing. And we have an ambassador who ingeniously now suggests that they ought to move the people out because they're posing a danger by being on the Iranian border. The United States has a moral and legal obligation to act here. These people are protected under the Fourth Geneva Convention. The U.S. has a promise in writing to protect them and to defer to President Maliki and his masters in Tehran who fear this organization. Why do they fear the organization? Because it's the only credible, effective, freedom-fighting force that threatens their regime.
I was delighted to see the Spanish judge announce that he was going to investigate Prime Minister Maliki as soon as he stepped down, which judge is now announced that he will investigate Prime Minister Maliki as a war criminal. But what looms in front of us is a far bigger war crime, that there can be no assurance by the Iraqi government that would have the credibility that we could rely on, or that the people of Ashraf could rely on. What are the reasons for keeping the MEK on the terrorist list? In 2006, when we disarmed the members of the MEK in Ashraf, we gave a signed, our commander on the ground gave a signed piece of paper to every single resident of Ashraf saying that the United States would protect them. We did not say we will protect you until the Iraqis take over, we will protect you until Maliki takes over, or if he changes his mind, then we reserve the... We said that we would protect them. That is the word of the United States of America. At that time, when we took over Ashraf and disarmed the residents, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and we have one of the most distinguished leaders of that agency with us today, according to Colonel Morsh, interviewed every single person who's at Ashraf, including interrogating some of them. Not one person that they interviewed out of the 3,400 was found to be a terrorist. Well, so now we have a group of people who are under siege by supposedly our ally, who have been found by the Federal Bureau of Investigation not to be terrorists, who have been promised the protection of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and 35 of them were massacred in cold blood a few months ago. We are in this for the people of Ashraf, not because we want to overthrow the Iranian government, although that would be a very good idea. We are in this for the people of Ashraf because, as General Shelton said, we gave our word. We stand up for those who are trying to stand up for themselves but don't have the means to do this. We risk being the Dutch at Srebrenica instead of being the Americans in the Balkans. We cannot give up our legacy of standing for a free people who are willing to stand for themselves, especially for those who do not have the ability right now to stand for themselves. We have to do this not for the people of Ashraf, not for the Iranian American community. We have to do this so that the United States of America remains a great country dedicated to freedom, opportunity, and personal responsibility. Thank you very much.
We can win this battle in the short run about Ashraf and in the long run about what's going to happen to Iran. Because the American people have to be told that there is a force out there that wants to make change, that those young people that you described and the women are ready to make change, that they just need a little assistance, and they'll create a government that will share the wealth, will have common prosperity around the country, the single most important thing they need. There is a government that will give women their rights. There is a government that will treat Arab, Jew, and Iranian equally. There is a government who will respect religious freedom and tradition. There is a government possible. If we can paint that picture, we can not only in the short run do what's necessary to protect the residents of Ashraf, but in the long run we can create that third option, that it doesn't have to be conflict. As the General Conway said, the third option is regime change, but not regime change at the end of American tanks, but the regime change on Twitter, on Ping, on apps, on everything. That regime change that comes from the hearts of people. Because when the hearts of people are united in the right cause.
I am less than clear on what our government is going to do about Camp Ashraf, and it troubles me greatly. We have already stepped away. We've already turned it over to the Iraqi forces. And each day, our influence on the government of Iraq diminishes. Why? Because we are in the process of withdrawing. I think that as strongly and as loudly and as vigorously as we can, we need to continue to pressure the administration, to pressure anybody with any ability to have an influence on this, to see that the residents are not just protected, but are provided for going forward. I agree with what has been said about the disaster that arises if they are forced to relocate inside Iraq. I agree that the United States continues to have a responsibility for that, and I urge the United States to step up to that responsibility.
I guess I'm the only member of the panel that may have had physical responsibilities for their security. And I'll go back with you and tell you that in 2004, when my expeditionary force went back into Iraq, we went into the western province and had responsibility for securing a couple of elements of MEK that were first around Fallujah and then relocated down southwest of a place we call Togo. I asked my superior, what kind of bag of worms are you handing me here? Our job is tough enough. To have a, quote, terrorist group in our midst is something that I was not prepared to take aboard. But as I dispatched some of my commanders to sit down and talk with these folks, as I visited myself, these people are not terrorists. They're no more terrorists than the people here on the panel. Now, it seems to me the press of events, and other members of the panel have played them out, I think, very nicely, are such today that we have got to reconsider our national posture towards the people at Camp Ashraf and the MEK in general. And I've got to tell you, what happened recently should be a national outrage. And unfortunately, I don't see it. As long as there are troops in Iraq, U.S. troops in Iraq, we bear a responsibility for what has happened and what should happen in the future.